right, looks like we have a good few people coming in, so we'll go ahead and get this started so we can stay good on time. Welcome everyone who's here today to SEO and Website Playbook, How to Stay Competitive. We're so excited to give this presentation today. In case none of y'all have joined our webinars before, thank you for coming for the first time. I'm Olivia, I work on the Spectora marketing team, and I actually got the start of my career in the SEO world. And I deal with Spectora's website every day. So I'm really excited to give this presentation today, especially because I think more and more we're seeing that home inspectors really need to care about their SEO and website presence. I'm also thrilled to be joined today by Matt Horn. He is the manager of Spectora's web team, and he is just an absolute expert. So I could say all the great things about him. But Matt, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Olivia. My name is Matt, and I'm the web team manager at Spectora. I've spent about 15 years in the website and SEO world, obviously in the home inspection industry, and also really in the home service industry as a whole. And I'm really excited to dive in today and discuss websites and SEO.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Matt. So yeah, just before we actually get into the presentation itself, want to call out a few things. We, as always in our webinars, if this is your first time joining, we try to leave a good 15 plus minutes for questions at the end. If you have questions as we're presenting, please go ahead and ask them. You can just go and ask them in the questions tab that you should see at the bottom of your screen. And again, if we're not answering it throughout the webinar, we will do our best to get to it at the end. So just, yeah, stay patient with that and please ask all the questions you have. Second here is if you're having any technical difficulties, we do have a Spectora team member on to manage the webinar chat. So if you're having any technical difficulties or if you can't hear us or need anything from us during the webinar, feel free to go to the chat for that. That's just our best way of keeping it organized. Make sure we don't miss any of your important questions while we're still able to help and make sure you all can hear the webinar well. And then last but not least, because we always get this question, yes, we do record this webinar. If for whatever reason you have to leave a little early, we will email the recording to your inbox after. Highly recommend sticking around till the end. We do have a little special something to offer for attendees of this webinar. But with that said, yeah, let's jump right into it. I think SEO and Website Playbook, super important to talk about why this really matters for home inspectors, right? Because a lot of you I know are getting your business from realtors, and the question that I've heard all the time, and I don't know about you, Matt, is that, oh, I don't know, I get my business over the phone, I network in person. Why do I actually need a website? So let's talk about like why the SEO and website world is actually incredibly important if you own and run a home inspection business and why it's worth investing in.
Absolutely. And a common theme that we'll talk about kind of today is going to be, user experience. So I just wanted to start off by mentioning that. But really, it is essential in today's world for a home inspector to have the website and then also to look at SEO. And we'll talk a little bit about why, this matters and then kind of go into some specifics. But the first impression, and if somebody is going online and they're doing a search and they're pulling up and deciding who to go for a home inspection, the credibility and the trust is something that really makes a massive difference. And again, the first impression of your business is going to be the website for your online footprint. So think of it almost as like, you're driving down the highway with a billboard that represents your business. The same thing here within the internet is going to be the website, and a well-designed and user-friendly site that shows you're professional, that shows the different services that you offer is extremely important. And then SEO adding onto the website will help you rank higher in the search results. And again, that's going to be more visible when people are doing searches for a home inspector near them. Your website pops up, they click in, they learn a little bit more about you and your business. And that's that first impression when somebody gets to the website. If it's a little bit of a poor website overall, poor user experience, you're not going to look like one of the top inspectors that you are. And the website is a really easy way to showcase that.
Absolutely. I think that's so well said. And I think this just brings up such an important point that I know Kevin talks about all the time, that we talk about all the time as well, is even if you're not getting a ton of business from someone just searching on Google, like home inspector near me or something like that. The first thing that a realtor is going to do if you meet them at an open house, if you meet them at a Chamber of Commerce meeting or any other in-person event, or if you're networking with them, getting in touch with them on social media, one of the first things they're going to do is probably Google your home inspection company. And when they do, it's really important you can have something to show up professionally, right? So, like Matt said, first impressions matter so much, especially for a realtor or a home buyer who is probably choosing between working with many home inspectors in your same market. And I know we've heard from so many of our website clients, and Matt, you could probably speak to this better than I could, but just like how much of a difference that makes from them and how many compliments our home inspectors get when they have a well-designed website and how many jobs they've won from that even. So I just think it's really important to call out that that first impression matters. And if you give a bad first impression, we're not saying you're going to lose a deal necessarily, but you have a much higher chance of doing so. And it's harder to win someone back if they get a negative first impression. So that's the number one thing to talk about, like why this is just essential as a home inspector to have and invest in. Number two, let's talk a little bit about lead generation, Matt, because I think this is something you and I have talked about a lot that's super interesting to me and that I don't know if all home inspectors are thinking about as a way their website can work for them.
Absolutely. And I think this first part right here, the 24/7 salesperson really jumps out. So even, if somebody, let's say they have a long day at work and then they get home later at night and they're doing some research online and, you may even be asleep at that point, but this is another way for you to get your business out in front of people. And then you're capturing leads even outside of their normal working hours. And I think that that's extremely important and then also with the SEO, driving those qualified leads or relevant traffic to the website. And again, you're increasing your chances of converting those visitors into clients. And the lead generation with the website is extremely important. Olivia and I have talked about this a lot. It's you can have a website and you can rank at the very, very top on Google. But if the website really isn't acting, as a true representation of your business, then people probably are going to click out and they're going to click, maybe somewhere else. And so having a really, well done website and then also having the rankings behind it is just another way to generate leads that are out there. And with SEO, we mentioned qualified and relevant traffic because SEO, you're going after specific search terms that are pertaining to your industry, the ones that we know get the most search volume out there on the web. And when we dive into SEO in a little bit, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But making sure that we understand you've got your website and we want to rank high with that website. If you have a poor website, and then, even if you're driving traffic to it, you might not be converting. Whereas if you have an awesome website, but you're not doing any kind of SEO or you're not at the top of rankings, then you're probably not getting visitors to that website. So websites and SEO are essential and they do go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And I want to just quickly say, I think Matt and I, and anyone who works in the marketing and SEO space, we can slip really quickly into marketing speak and jargon. When we're talking about like a qualified lead or relevant traffic, what we're really talking about is either a realtor you can work with, or B, like a client or investor who is searching out and ready to book a home inspection. So when we're talking about a qualified lead or what relevant traffic is, it's just anyone who comes to you who is actually ready to book and become a client or work with you. I also just want to quickly touch on before we move on the importance of like a website acting as a 24/7 salesperson and capturing leads outside of business hours. I just love what you said there, Matt, because any home inspector, no matter how great your customer service is, no matter how many answers you say or how many hours you say, oh, I'm going to be able to answer the phone, it's humanly impossible to be there 24/7, but your website can't, right? And if you've come to one of our webinars before or actually checked out our Spectora Academy Growth Hub, you might be familiar with the concept of shadow selling, which is essentially all of the work your website, your social media, your SEO presence, all of that does when you're not actually there to sell yourself. So yeah, again, that's just why this is so important. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Matt, because I just think that's one of the most important reasons why a home inspector can have a website, and a great website at that. All right. And then last I think of as to why this is so important, let's talk about how website, SEO presence, all of that can actually give home inspectors a competitive edge in their market.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take something that you said a few minutes ago and kind of tie this in here because I think is such a great point is let's say that you get a referral or somebody says, hey, I used Mr. Home Inspector the other week. People are still most likely going to go online and look up your business. They're going to look at your reviews. They're going to kind of see what's going on, and then they're going to look at your website. And again, a well-designed website really separates you from your competition, from everyone out there who may not have an up-to-date website. And that is such a driving force when people are making decisions about who they want to use. And I think that this really gives you that competitive edge. And it really does play such a big part in the client decision making. So even if somebody's not doing a search, let's say they heard about you, they heard about the wonderful services, they're going to go on, they're going to look at your website, they're going to look at the reviews that are out there. Reviews are such an important part that we're going to touch on as well. But this really ties it all together. And especially with the way that now searches are being done from your phone and more mobile searches out there. I know that they've surpassed desktop searches in the past couple years. It's another important step to make sure that your website is, again, mobile friendly and that it is up to date with the 2024 standards with Google. And again, we'll touch a little bit more on that when we get to the SEO and what some things that Google really does look for. But just tying it back to what we said in the beginning, people are doing searches. We know that if you do a search on Google, you can go to the very bottom and it'll usually say, page 1 out of, hundreds. And so we know that there's so many searches that are being done. Google gives us that information. And so now we want to make sure that everybody understands having a website with SEO is what you really need to be doing as far as driving more business online.
Absolutely. And then when we talk about online versus not online, a website can play such a huge role in client decision making specifically. So I think when you think about a home buyer's journey to booking a home inspector, right? Like they're probably either Googling maybe, or likely they're getting a couple recommendations for a home inspector from their realtor. And what they're probably going to do is Google, the couple home inspectors that they've been recommended, probably pull up all your websites next to each other, right? Pull up all of your positive reviews from your Google business profile, which hopefully all of y'all have. And actually, if you don't, we just, Kevin and I just gave a webinar Tuesday that y'all can find on our YouTube channel or in the Spectora Academy Growth Hub on building a Google business profile. So Matt and I aren't going to break that down too much today. But if you're curious, like, what is a Google business profile? What do I need one? Go watch that. It's called the New Inspector Digital Startup Guide. But with that said, why it can play such a big part in client decision making is this is obviously, as you all know, like one of the biggest transactions a home buyer will ever make, like in their life, that a person will ever make in their life. So if they have a couple websites pulled up next to each other, sure, like certain things like pricing might play a factor, but what really I think we've seen plays the biggest role in decision making is how well a home inspection company can represent themselves, right? Like, can they show that they are the best choice for a client? So that's again why a website is just so important. With that said, given our spiel on why any of this matters, let's talk about actually staying competitive, which is, the biggest part of this webinar. And I think it's important to touch on a quick note. Why does Spectora put on a version of this webinar once a quarter? And that is because once a quarter, give or take. Don't hold us to that. But it's because the website and SEO space is constantly evolving, right? Google has updates. I don't know if any of you all have searched on Google lately. You're probably seeing that, oh, like AI is now answering some of your questions, and the search engine results page looks a little bit different. And if you've just looked at websites at all in the past 5, 10, 20 years, or even the past year, you've probably noticed that websites themselves are changing, forever getting better and more usable. So I think it's just so important. And Matt, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on this too. Like why your website and SEO isn't necessarily a static process, but something that every home inspector, every person with a website and SEO presence should be revisiting, I'd say pretty regularly, like a couple times a year, making sure they're staying on track. Do you have any thoughts on that before we like dive into the details?
Absolutely. And it's almost like a moving target sometimes with Google and the other search engines. And now AI is absolutely everywhere. You're seeing that in so many different faces. And I think the biggest thing is that you need to stay current and staying up to date. So there's new information that comes in, year over year that Google is making updates to certain things that they want to see websites that are doing. And again, this is where that user experience that I mentioned from the beginning really comes into play. Google obviously wants everybody using Google. We're going to say Google throughout this entire presentation. There are other search engines in other places. They follow a similar kind of a path there with how they're determining ranking factors when it comes to websites. But just to tie this back, Google is making updates. 10 years ago, mobile phones weren't necessarily the biggest thing with searches. In the past few years, we know that that's a massive thing. People had to make updates to their websites in order to rank high in the mobile version. And that's just an example of why this is a little bit of that moving target. And you need to stay up to date. So doing these webinars, letting everybody know these newest trends is extremely important to just making sure that, again, you're staying ahead of the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that said, let's just jump into and talk about how I think you brought up a point that I do want to touch on really quickly is that we say Google a lot of the time, and there's a good reason for that, right? It's because Google is far and away the most popular search engine. I mean, I'm sure, maybe someone here uses Bing or Firefox if that's still around, I don't even know, but I think that most people, most agents, most clients are going to Google for their searches. So that's why when we talk about search engine optimization, we're usually specifically referring to Google, but it's really important to note that any of the practices that we talk about with SEO and with your website are just going to help you on other search engines as well. So all of these best practices can largely be applied just to the general ecosystem of having a good website and having a good web presence that will help you wherever someone is searching. But yeah, SEO and Google tend to be pretty synonymous when you're not synonymous necessarily, but when we talk about SEO, we often are talking specifically about Google just because that's where the searchers are. So that said, let's talk about what's changed maybe since the last time Spectora put on an SEO webinar and some of the current things that, Matt, you're seeing with all of the clients we work with and just in the SEO space in the past year or so.
Absolutely. And it's going back to a couple things that we have here. So the importance of local SEO, the voice search, and then AI. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about these, but staying up with the trends, we know that that's important. We just kind of hit on that piece. And over the course of the past, several years, again, there's been a huge shift with mobile. There's been a huge shift with local. There's been a huge shift with the voice search. And, you hear about all these different Alexa and Siri. And so voice search is something over the past couple of years that we've really had to pay attention to and try to figure out how can we also make sure that we're accounting for the voice searches that are being done over here and then paying attention to these algorithms. So with local SEO, I know we briefly touched on it. That's the Google business profile. That's where you want to make sure, again, you have it set up with reviews and everything there. So that's extremely important. It's a no-brainer to have that when you're getting your business going, or again, down the road, if you have 300-400 reviews, extremely important. So there's a local presence to it. The voice search is something where, a lot of FAQs. And what I mean by that is the frequently asked questions, whether it's on your website or in the back end of your website, accounts for a lot of these voice searches and helping Google understand that your website is more than just, home inspector, but how much does it cost? Or do I need to be present during a home inspection? Working with some of these gives Google more to chew on with your website because they understand more of the features. And voice searches are typically longer searches. It's a lot easier to just talk into your phone as opposed to typing it out. So that's why you see a lot of the content now being worded in sort of a question-like way, because it helps Google pull information from your website and learn more about it if somebody is doing some of those kind of longer or voice searches. And then the same thing with sort of the AI is we understand now that they're going to be pulling in and people, I don't know if this is going to be a trend over the next 5 years, but instead of going to Google, maybe they're just going straight to one of these AI, ChatGPT like. And again, it's making sure that these different ways that people are doing searches, they understand what your website is all about. So when we say if you have a website, that's only let's say a page or two, well, that's only a page or two that Google is going to learn more about your business. But if you have pages spread throughout the site, you have relevant content going back to those keywords that we talked about at the beginning, you're setting yourself up for a better success rate of people finding you on Google, because Google knows what your website is all about. And so when people are doing these searches, boom, it's going to be easier for you to show up there. And then the last thing I'll say is the regular updates. Yes, Google wants to see that the light is on behind the scenes of your website. If you set up your site and then you don't touch it for a couple years, Google starts to question, is this person, even in business, because they're not seeing any of these regular updates. It is extremely important with the website and SEO that you're doing regular updates. So if it's a blog post once a quarter, or if it's just updating your site, once or twice throughout the year with some new photos or some new content, that is giving Google more to know about the website, and they're seeing that kind of the light is on behind the scenes there. So these are all just current trends with SEO. We're always trying to figure out what, curveball is going to be thrown next by Google and trying to stay in front of it. And by doing the research, by doing kind of, some testing here and there, we're able to stay ahead of that. So these are kind of the biggest things that are going on within the marketplace now. And we just want to make sure that everybody is at least aware of this.
Totally. And I love that. That's so well said, Matt. And before we move on, because I know we'll get into this later in the presentation, but I want to point out that optimizing for voice search and AI, like that can sound like a lot to do. And honestly, like even being in this space for years, when I was first hearing about this stuff, I was like, okay, what does that even mean? Like, how do you optimize something for voice search? And like Matt said, like touched on a lot of frequently asked questions. So I think the best thing when I'm thinking about, okay, how can I make sure like Spectora's website is optimized for all of these things? It's if I was to want to know about Spectora, and I'd encourage you all to apply this to your own home inspection businesses, what are the questions people would want to know, and how can I answer them in plain language? So, for example, if, as a home inspector, you offer a residential inspection, right? So let's say first-time homebuyers go onto your site and is wondering, what is a residential inspection? What I would do in that instance is have like a frequently asked question on your site or on your Google business profile, because you can actually answer FAQs on your Google business profile too. That says, what you phrase it as like, what is a residential home inspection? And then you phrase that answer back in plain text. So like a residential home inspection is a home inspection of a residential dwelling, XYZ. And I always think like that's the best way to explain it. Like you just answer questions as you would answer them to your neighbor, obviously sounding professional or something. But with voice search and with AI and with Google basically focusing a lot on like how to provide the user with the most helpful content, it's just that. It's like the simplicity, the detail, and yeah, making sure that you can answer those questions that are being typed in or spoken in to people's phones and devices. Wonderful. With that said, that's a perfect segue, I think, to like user experience. So, Matt, you and I have seen like in the SEO and website space over the years just how Google has started to value more user experience, which I just think is like so great, because obviously user experience is super important and matches. Like I think in the SEO world, if you've, focused on SEO for a while, it can sometimes feel like you were gaming the system or trying to like write for a machine. And I think more than ever now, everything's more aligned, where we've seen that a lot of the best practices are like making things on your website as good for an agent or client who lands on there will do you really well. So yeah, Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about like user experience, why that's so important and what we're seeing?
Absolutely. And again, kind of the theme here, this is so important. And think about it in a weird way. If you do a search on Google and you're looking for an Italian restaurant and you get a bunch of results for movies showing at the local theater, you're thinking, well, that's not at all what I was looking for. And so if you typing in or you're doing searches and you're getting poor results because of that, you're probably going to think, well, I might not even go back to Google. I might try something different. So Google really does boil it down to the user experience. And we all know that in today's world, everybody's on the move faster than ever. A lot of people are on their devices. You have a shorter window of capturing people once they land on your website to show what you do, where you do it, and how to get in touch with you. And those are extremely important. We have in a couple slides, we'll look at a website and kind of point out some of those things. But Again, it's going to keep somebody on your website because they understand, okay, I got here, I did a search, this is exactly what I was looking for. So they're going to stay on your site longer, and then reducing bounce rates. So just super quick on that. If you ever been to a website and you have the photo that starts to load and it kind of slowly loads, and the content isn't really populating there, you're probably going to end up clicking off of that website. And that is what's called a 100% bounce rate. So if you get to a website and then you leave that site right away, that's a quote unquote bouncing off the website. So reducing the bounce rate means you want that user to engage with your website, click around, learn a little bit more, fill out the form, or even heck, pick up the phone and call. And so that's by having this user experience, you're going to capture people to your website that are going to stay there. Fast load times, we know if the site loads slow, people are going to click off. Google has data on that, and you can see with a higher bounce rate, poor user experience. A lot of times too, if you're scrolling on your phone and you have to zoom in and out on certain content because it's not mobile friendly or mobile optimized, again, poor user experience. So easy information. You got about 5 to 7 seconds again when somebody hits that site to learn more about you and to kind of capture those. So the user experience is extremely important. If Google deems that your website has a poor user experience, you're not going to rank high because Google wants everybody coming back using Google. And so these are just some things to look for when looking at the website. Fast load times, easy navigation, the mobile side, getting the information readily available, and then the contact information. Some call to actions, which again, we'll touch on in a minute there. But it's Google is prioritizing those mobile friendly sites. We've already said that mobile searches have surpassed desktop searches, and Google is essentially saying straight to you, if you have a poor user experience with your website, you're not going to rank as high.
Absolutely. And that was so well said. And I just want to touch on really quickly, if you're thinking like, okay, this is great information, like, how do I do this? I think the biggest piece of advice I would get is like, vet your web design services, make sure when you are, unless you're a web designer and doing it all yourself, which I have heard some home inspectors do, like, this isn't necessarily all things that you're going to have to worry about. Like with a good web designer, a lot of this will just be taken care of. So I think it's more for home inspectors not building their own website, like asking the right questions, making sure your web designers like care about mobile first, that they're going to give you the platform to basically make the content that you're putting on your site look good, right? And then second point I just wanted to make here is also like I think the simplest way to distill this and like the importance of this is wherever they're searching from, like whether it be their desktop or especially as we've seen, like more common nowadays, I think it's like 60 something percent of all local searches are done on mobile, like something crazy like that. Um, and before I move on, I do want to quickly define like when we say local searches or local SEO, that's when you're trying to like appear and rank on Google for a certain area. So like for example, home inspector in Boston, Massachusetts, like just not necessarily that you're trying to appear when someone's looking for like what is a home inspector or something like that. But yeah, basically if someone is searching for something like that, that they can go to your site on mobile or desktop and get all of the answers to the questions that they need fast with a website that loads easily and that the content that they want, or really beyond the content they want, the action they want, right? The ability to get in touch with you or to book a home inspection is easy to find. So we'll talk through like tips for conversion a little bit later in this webinar, but I think that's how I just want to like easily explain this in a way to like the why of this whole slide and why user experience matters, both to real humans like looking at your site and to Google. Wonderful. Matt, I think so. You and I have talked a lot about how like with SEO, it can feel like a lot of snake oil salesmen all the time. And like, to be completely honest, we chatted yesterday about how sometimes it is. But I'd love for you to just talk about that a little bit. And like, let's talk through some of the real results we've seen when we focus on SEO with some of our home inspectors.
Absolutely. And thank you for that point on the local SEO too. I know we've talked a lot about that, and sometimes people hear it and think, what truly does that mean? And the biggest takeaway there is, I think in this slide, kind of tying in the Google business profile interactions. So if you're on your phone and you have any app that is like a driving or directions, whether it's Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, any of those, and you're using that app, your location settings is turned on. So when you're doing a search, Google knows where you are within that phone. And so that's where these local searches are so important, because if somebody just does home inspector near me, Google's going to look at that location. And if your business is there and it's relevant, that's increasing the chances for you to show up when somebody is doing those searches. And some of the case studies that we've seen by doing some SEO, that middle one, the Google Business Profile, that's really that local feel to it. And you can see the increase there within the interaction. So that's people clicking on reviews, learning more about the hours, learning more about your services, interaction there. And when you start to do SEO and you focus on the local aspect of it, you're going to see in turn that people are going to start engaging more with your profile. And again, your profile, we talked a little bit about that. That's like the shell of your website when the local results with the reviews. Olivia, you mentioned earlier there's a question and answer section in your Google Business Profile, tying that together, people clicking, learning more about your business. When you answer a question, it says next to your name that you're the owner of that business. So, some of these case studies, the interactions there, the number of scheduled appointments too has increased. Again, you're more visible. So with SEO, the purpose there is to increase your rankings on Google and to increase within the directories and the different places that are on the web. We want Google to understand that you're everywhere. And so when we have that NAP score up at the top there, name, address, phone number, that's what the NAP stands for. And when you put yourself out on different directories and you have consistent information, so again, your name is the same on all of these, the address, the phone number. I totally understand that some inspectors don't want to show their address because they work out of their home, and even for security reasons. That's totally fine. We can, hide that. I just wanted to make that point super quick. But these are all kind of that local feel within SEO. You start to get better placement because we're working relevant search terms. So when people are typing that in, you're showing up in the local area, you're showing up with your website in the organic section. And then again, Google sees that you're out on all these different places on the internet. And this goes back to that user experience. If you have an NAP score that, you have different phone numbers out there, different address, and even the name of your business is different, Google gets confused as well. So they're probably not going to show your information, where if it's consistent across the board, again, that makes you look more relevant in Google's eyes, and they want to display that information. So the schedule of appointments increasing, the Google Business Profile interactions increasing, your NAP score increasing. A lot of times we'll see that kind of in the 0 or the teens when we start, and then getting that to 100% accuracy across the board is extremely important, again, for the relevancy of your business to Google.
Totally. And I want to just, Matt, you explained that so well. And I just want to quickly jump in on 2 different points. That NAP score, name, address, phone number, and local listings, that's something that's a part of our SEO Boost package and is really important to local SEO. And essentially just like what that means is your information consistent across all of the local listings that you're on? So that might be your Google Business Profile, sure, but also your whatever the Bing equivalent is, your Facebook page, your Yelp page, if you have a listing on Angie's List, like all of that. And then a ton of listings that like there are hundreds that you might not even like put yourself on, that your information is automatically like just pulled to when you put it out on the internet, right? And so, making sure that information is really consistent across all platforms is huge, because essentially it helps like legitimize your business, right? If your phone number is different, on your Facebook page, different on your Yelp, or your hours on your Google Business Profile don't match your hours listed on Angie's List, that's signaling that you're not a trustworthy site, right? And so that's why local listing is important. But it's like Google Business Profile interactions, Snap Score, like we know these are important, but if you're not an SEO or marketing nerd, like that might seem inconsequential. The number I love here so much and find so impressive from this case study is after like just 7 months of SEO investment, we saw that number of scheduled appointments increased by 42.8%. Like that's huge. Imagine, I don't know. I think that this is just the nerdy stuff I get excited about, like seeing how much good SEO work can help inspectors like get tangible results, because unfortunately there are a lot of players in the SEO world who will just be like, oh yeah, one time, you're going to pay me, and people don't see results. And I think that's why SEO gets a bad name, but just want to highlight that this actually works. And we do have like another case study with data collected and averaged over a 6-month comparison period. So again, this one We saw still like the number of inspections completed grew by about 16.5%, which is huge. Monthly revenue, this is my favorite. Like from SEO work, monthly revenue increased 25%. Like I don't know, that's giant. Like that's such a big difference for our inspectors who saw these changes. So don't need to spend too much time breaking this down. We'll send out the slide deck after, but I just think like that's the coolest thing to see. And I think this is like the best illustration of like why this is worth investing in for your business and caring about. Um, and then I do want to say, I know some of y'all might see those if we have any like data nerds like Matt and I, you might want to read the full case studies. We do have those on our website, like on our SEO boost page. So we'll send that out in the webinar resources along with the recording if anyone wants to see the rest of the data. For those of y'all who are like, no, I don't care about that, didn't want to make like most of the webinar just going over it. But yeah, I just think want to shout out that we have those if you want to read more there. Um, Okay, here's something I'm really excited about. Matt and I are gonna go through a website before and after. So this is Matt, do you want to talk about a little bit about what this is? And by the way, the after is intentionally blurred out. We have to keep some element of suspense, but yeah, just about what this is and what this before and after is here.
Absolutely. So this is just simply showcasing a website that we onboarded, that we went through the process of building a new website. So on the non-blurred one, this is a snapshot of what the website looked like previous to working with Spectora and the web design team. And again, this common theme of user experience, we're going to walk through why this was such an important upgrade, if you will, for the website. So the before and after is just a snapshot. This is the home page of the previous website, and then we'll see what the new one will look like in a couple slides here.
Absolutely. And I think we want to dig in further and just like talk about some of the reasons why, because if you're not super familiar with like why a website can be better for like actually booking inspections or anything, just wanted to point out a couple things in this before that like when our web team sees a before of a website, the things they're going to notice that a Spectora or like any great web designer can definitely improve upon. So do we want to go through like some of the things I know so a couple of the arrows here are pointing to text. I think something that I notice here first is just that like the purple on purple, well, it's beautiful. I love purple. It's kind of hard to read, especially if you think about seeing this on a mobile phone. Do you have anything you want to add there, Matt, or anything else you're noticing like with the before of this site?
Sure. I think it just, the first glance, it just looks a little, I don't know, cluttered, if you will. I think the photos, some of the information, just it kind of almost just looks like, thrown a little bit there. And I think, the arrows, so you have a lot of empty space underneath the service offerings. The service offerings seem to be kind of misaligned there. As Olivia said, sort of the color scheme, the menu on the left side, kind of small up at the top there. It just doesn't have this kind of clean look and feel to it. And I think too, when somebody again is seeing your website for the very first time, what you do, where you do it, and how to get in touch with you, we kind of lose that right here. There really isn't much, you can have the blurb, if you will, or the description there really for anybody, anywhere. And again, if somebody's getting here, I don't know where, kind of this is or some of the specifics. And we do see the service offerings here, but those are the things that really jump out, having kind of a clean navigation, being able to see the information readily available. And that's what's hooking those users within that first 5 to 7 seconds.
Yes, exactly. And I think the biggest thing here that I noticed when I was looking through is like a lot of this site, I know as someone who's like very involved in the inspection industry, what a lot of this means. But for a first-time home buyer, for a real estate investor, or anyone who isn't really familiar with the world of home inspection, there's not a lot of context here, right? So like we have these great InterNACHI certifications that are really fantastic, like highly recommend if you have them, having them on your site. But as a home buyer, I don't really have any context for what those certifications mean. And then secondly, the services on the right, I see that there are home inspections, there's radon testing, there's sewer scope, but if I was not in the home inspection world as someone who was a first time home buyer, like I've never bought a home before, I'm coming in and I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't have any reason why I should need that, why I should know that's something I care about. Like maybe I heard about my home inspection from my realtor, and I'm like, okay, great, they offer home inspections. If there are ancillary services being offered, like there are no details here, which means I, as a client, am less likely to book. And then the other big thing here is there's a teeny tiny get in touch button. Can probably see it right on the screen up top. I didn't when I was first looking through the site, which is why Matt and I didn't put a red arrow here, but it's really, really hard to see anywhere on this homepage where someone could actually book an inspection. So with that said, let's look at the after and like what a version of this website for a really, really wonderful inspector looks like when it shows him in the proper light. So Matt, is there anything you want to talk through here at first?
Absolutely. I think again, sort of following this theme here is the call to action is the one thing to really kind of jump out. And I know you had just hit on there was kind of that small get in touch button. Well, one of the things that we want to do is again for the user experience, make it extremely easy for somebody to get in touch with you, fill out a form, learn more about your business, and you can see some of these arrows here. We have the blue schedule your inspection call to action button right when somebody gets to the website. This is kind of the first thing they see there. At the very bottom in the middle, we have a couple, more call outs. On the right-hand side, we have the form, that somebody could fill out. It's making it easier for somebody to learn about your business and then to get in touch with you. And those are extremely important and things that we really pay attention to when designing and building websites. And also just the flow of it, the clean kind of look and feel to it, you showcasing your reviews up at the top right there. That's extremely important about your business as well. A little bio about yourself, photo there. When people want to learn more about you, they love seeing photos, of you, and they like learning just a little bit about you, kind of the background. When we look at websites and we do research into analytics, where are people going when they visit a website? And we see these about pages show up a lot of the times because people are interested in learning more about, who they're going to trust to do the inspection. As Olivia mentioned earlier, we have probably one of the biggest decisions is purchasing your home and following through, with that inspection there. So people do want to see this information. And I think the arrows here just really showcase kind of a clean look and feel. The services are right there, a little bit more information about those services. A point that you made too on the previous slide is there was no text or anything about that. So when Google's determining sewer scope, all they really see is that single word. But if you look over here, now there's a little bit more information for the search engines and also the user to learn about the services that you offer. And then you really have kind of showcasing in the middle here, the communication, the pride in your work, competitive pricing. These are what separate you from the competition, from any general inspector out there. And I think that it's important to showcase and highlight on your website. Again, this is your brand, your business, your livelihood. When people are getting here, learning about you, how to get in touch with you, this really captures them within that first 5 to 2nd theme that we've been talking about today as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't even think I have to add anything there. I think you called it out all well. But the last thing I'll say is like, man, I just love seeing this because, we know that this is a wonderful inspector, right? And I think like seeing all of the wonderful things about this inspection company laid out in a way a client would be able to really clearly understand, or a realtor looking to work with him would be able to truly understand is fantastic. Like that's the best thing about a well-designed website is it essentially paints you in the light you should be painted in as a fantastic home inspector. So just here side by side, these images are compressed, like just if it looks like a lot of information, we just wanted to fit it all on one page. But yeah, it's just cool to see how when the information is presented in a really easily understandable way, like what a big difference that can make in just essentially, as we talked about earlier, like shadow selling your business. All right, with that, I want to make sure we're leaving plenty of time for questions, but let's run through some tips to increase your conversion rate. And so quickly, your conversion rate essentially when someone lands on your website, so whether that be a realtor or client, your conversion rate is how often they are converting into a book inspection. So the rate at which they are booking an inspection from your website. That's what a conversion rate is. Just in case I probably over define terms, but I always want to make sure I'm not like leaving any jargon up in there where people are like, what are you talking about? So yeah, want to talk about calls to action real quick?
Absolutely. And this was, again, kind of that previous one where you saw the schedule your inspection. It's really guiding the user to that conversion. So whether it's schedule your inspection, book now, learn more, these are all what we call the clear call to actions, and making sure, again, that it's very visible. When somebody gets to the site, what we do, sort of the research again, is we'll look at some heat maps every now and then. So when a user is on a website, where do they go? Where are they clicking? Where are they scrolling? And if you have these call to actions that are easily accessible, somebody can notice it right away. Again, it makes that journey easier for them to hopefully end up converting into one of your clients.
Absolutely. And yeah, just put an example of like what the call to action is, like that book now button, that would be what a call to action is. So making sure those are on your website. Also like let's talk through trust signals quickly. I think we might have touched on it earlier, but yeah.
Yeah, and this is, again, there's the Google, or kind of the search engine realm, when it comes to the trust signals and the trustworthiness. And if your information is not the same across the board or inaccurate, that's not giving a high trust signal to Google. But then there's the same thing on your actual website, so that when people are visiting, making sure that you're highlighting your certifications and affiliations and your reviews, because this does build trust. If you get your website and there's one review versus you get your website and there's 100 reviews, it really does make a difference. So showcasing those, making sure that you're encouraging, again, when people get to the website, that you're not leaving any doubt in their mind that they want to end up going with you. And then also the images and then the videos of your work in the team. It's okay to use stock photos, stock images, but again, by having the personal touch and feel to it, really does make a difference. So if there's any action shots, maybe in a crawl space, or maybe, on a ladder or something like that, it just goes to show, hey, we are human. I am coming to your house and working through this, as opposed to just looking like, any corporation out there. So the trust signals for the Google version, and then also for the human element to it on your website as well, is extremely important.
And oftentimes the Venn diagram of those two things are basically a circle, honestly. If it's a trust signal to Google, it's likely going to be a trust signal to any one of your clients, realtors, anyone you work with as well. Then lastly, I think this is probably the most important one, simple and easy booking process.
Yep. And straightforward, but making it, again, very user friendly. I know we've said that 100 times, probably getting annoyed of that, but this is kind of closing with, it has to be a simple process. And then obviously having, the online scheduler taking advantage of this on your website, is we have that available. So walking the user through the experience when they get to the website. Okay, you've got the reviews, you're in our area, I've seen some of the action shots, everything is looking great. Now you have a very easy call to action. We're going to click on that, and we're going to go ahead and fill out the form, and making it just simple and smooth at the end of the day. This is also going to help increase your conversions.
Totally. And the great news is whether you have a Spectora site or if you don't have a Spectora site, you can embed this online scheduler within your website. Highly recommend if any of you don't have it, like that would be the first thing I do after this webinar, making sure that you just make it really easy for anyone landing on your site to book. And I just want to do a quick recap because we did cover a lot. So some of the general things like for your SEO, make sure you're updating regularly, keeping information like across all platforms consistent and accurate, and then making sure, if you're coming to webinars like these, you're doing this already, but making sure you're like paying attention and ready to optimize for newer technologies, such as voice search, just so you can actually like stay competitive, with everyone in this day and age, and inspectors who like are really investing in their website and having great SEO. And then for website work, again, just recap big points. Keep the user experience and the client and agent in mind always. And just really making sure your website is doing the work for you as your digital salesperson. And then the last thing that I think I put here that's really important is just remember it's a holistic system. So all of this works together to increase your conversion. It doesn't, you hear some inspectors who are like, oh, I get like 80% of my business from my Google business profile, and another inspector who's like, oh, I get 90% of my business from realtors I work with. And whether you're on either of those sides of the spectrum or in between, like this system is going to ensure that you get more bookings and maximize it. So really, if your customer acquisition strategy isn't something exactly like we talked through, this is still going to be really helpful for you, however you are getting your customers. Want to get questions, so I'm kind of zooming through the end of this, for all of our webinar recordings and Spectora learning, you can visit Spectora Academy. That's where the recording of this webinar will live if for some reason you don't have the email specifically. It will be in the Spectora Academy Growth Hub. We have all different categories of like video lessons that you can learn to grow your business. So with that said, yeah, let's go ahead and get to questions.
All right, we got some good questions that have come in through this, so we'll start going through them. First one, if I have a website that doesn't look all that great on mobile, is it something I can fix, or would I need to redo the whole website? P.S. I'm using WordPress. This is from Nancy.
That's a great question. Matt, you're probably a lot more primed to answer that than I am.
Unfortunately, it's not a direct yes or no answer here. I think the biggest thing is depending on the theme, the plugins, what you're using with WordPress, and also when you built it, there may be an approach to fixing it where it does come out better on mobile. But I will say that most likely is a Band-Aid approach where you're just kind of fixing it a little bit. So you may think for more of the long term, getting a website redesigned where you're gonna, it's gonna work for the next, 5 years, unless Google does something crazy. So I think that's kind of my roundabout answer is you may be able to do a quick fix for that, depending again on the theme, the plugins, and what you're using for WordPress. But you may want to also consider a more long-term approach where just rebuilding it and making sure that it's mobile friendly.
Awesome. Yeah, very good. Very good explanation there. Next one coming from Larry. If I could only do SEO for the main search results or for the local map search results, which one should I be focused on first?
So I mean, I'll just speak on this first. It should all be together, right? And I don't know what you're quite meaning by like main search results versus local map. But local SEO in general, it won't just show up in maps. It'll show up, on a main Google page. So I'd say focusing on your local SEO, so making sure that your listings are really, really solid, that you've spent time on your Google business profile. That's like the most important. And then like trying to rank through your blog or through your website independently of your local SEO is tier 2. I hope I'm understanding that question correctly, but Matt, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think there isn't a one versus the other. I'll just give 30 seconds on this is, Google's kind of split up into 4 different sandboxes. When you look at the search results page, you have the local maps, which we've hit on, and then the organic. And I most likely think you're talking about the organic, which is kind of underneath with the website there. But the approach that you take to it for the local results, it's going to be with your Google business profile and then your website. So if you're working on both of those at the same time, that'll encompass the local and those organic or natural results, which is the SEO portion to it. So again, if you're putting in keywords, cities, anything along those lines, working to get reviews, that's that holistic approach that we hit on at the very end of that webinar.
Great. Awesome. Next question comes from Christian. As someone who is interested in marketing and SEO, is it possible to do this on our own? Is it learnable or doable thing for a novice, or just hire out an actual professional?
So that's an awesome question. I mean, anything is doable technically, but it's like, how much time do you have? Do you want to be spending all of your time, especially, I don't know if you're a solo operator or not, but do you want to be spending your time learning about SEO and doing everything yourself? Like, Matt, do you want to, I don't know. I could go on for this forever. I think my TLDR is if you have the budget, leave it to the experts just so you're not having to worry about it. Matt, what do you think there?
I agree with you. It's sure it is doable, but again, it's the time. And I think that that's the biggest thing at the end of the day. So, and also staying up with the trends. So if you're going to take this on, just kind of knowing that there's a lot of things that be paying attention to out there. And if you don't, have the time to sit and kind of learn all of it and keep up with the trends, then it would make sense to kind of hire an agency or hire somebody to do that for you.
Yeah, and it's like, sure, like building the actual website, filling out your Google business profile originally, like those are big upfront lifts. But then it's, monitoring your traffic, making sure you're taking steps to, like, as we said in this webinar, like stay competitive. That's where the time suck can really happen. Like, even after you invest the time to just do it yourself and get it done. I'm not saying like I haven't seen success like that, but I do think that the reason most home inspectors outsource is because there are professionals who can do it and it's worth it because you're able to focus on the other aspects of your home inspection business where it really does make the biggest difference to have you as the person handling all of that. J2,
Great.
I see we have a question in the chat as well from John.
Yeah. I was about to pull that one up from John. So he says, I recently transitioned to Spectora as a report writer. The report writing experience has been a vast improvement in our user experience. We made a big investment in our website 3 years ago. I have, we won't say the competitor's name, hosting and managed SEO. I'm happy with the user experience. However, I don't feel the SEO performance is above average. Can the Spectora web team take over the SEO and make the necessary changes without having to make another big investment in rebuilding our current website?
So yes, is kind of the short answer. Again, the things that the Spectora team that we would need would be access to the website. So depending on who the website is currently with, some companies, for whatever reason, don't necessarily open up the doors for other people to get in there and do the work. So as long as we have the appropriate access, then yes, we will be able to jump in, work on the SEO side of things without having to do, a massive rehaul or rebuild of the website. But again, it does depend on the level of access, because there are things that we need to get in and really make updates to in order to be successful within SEO. If we don't have the tools to do that, then unfortunately, we're not going to be able to move the needle there. But I think that would be kind of, look at it together, see if we can get the appropriate access, and then certainly be able to jump in and help out.
Awesome. Yeah, just feel free to reach out to the bubble or your account manager if you have one, and they can get you in touch with the right people to talk that through. Let's see here. Are there tools out there that can tell you details on how your website is doing from an SEO perspective? That's from Betsy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, go for it, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to say there's definitely some tools out there that will give you some insight. But we do need to be a little bit cautious of which tools you use. And the reason I say that is there are companies out there who, will get the information. Let's say you plug in your website. They're going to spit back information to you about how you're doing with the intent to also try to sell you their services. So there are certain tools that you may, be able to run through, like SEMrush, I know is one of them that you can kind of plug in and get information on that. So there's certainly tools out there. We may be able to kind of talk, one-on-one or offline, and I can point you in a little bit of the direction. But, as we kind of talked, SEO does sometimes have this, negativity spun towards it. And a lot of it too, there are companies that are out there who are just trying to get people, to sign up by showing them results that might not 100% be accurate. So there's just a right way of kind of getting that information. And again, I'm more than happy to kind of just talk with you maybe one-on-one and get some of that information over to you.
Absolutely. Last thing I would say is, like, when you have a Google business profile too, there are just some automatic analytics tools that when you set it up, you can get analysis on that. Highly recommend looking at that, just understanding how it converts. And then when you, if you want to talk, I know we're at time, so I don't need to go down, but short answer, yes, I totally agree though with Matt. Like, always be conscious of the tools you're using and always understand your goal. Because sometimes, some of these tools are built to tell you about like huge websites like, I don't know, geico.com, who need to see tons and tons of traffic. And it's like, it's more important to understand like how you're converting and stuff like that. So don't need to get too deep into that spiral, but that's my 2 cents.
Awesome. We'll do one last question from Michael. Also, just want to say there's a couple of folks that we haven't got to your questions yet. Brian, we'll have somebody reach out to you on yours as well. So last one from Michael, and this is every SEO's favorite question. How long does it take to get your website ranked?
Yes, that is definitely the favorite question there. It takes time. It's not an overnight deal. When you make updates to a website, Google doesn't just see that right away. It's all through indexing. Safe bet 6 to 12 months in order to start really seeing good results from an SEO campaign. It takes time to build up these, trust factors with Google. If you make a change, it's not something that Google just sees right away. As I mentioned, they kind of go through indexing. So give yourself some time. It's going to take 6 to 12 months. It may be sooner, depending on the market that you're in. If it's not as competitive and you've had a site that's been out there for a while, you may be able to do some fixes and start seeing results within a few months. But if it's a brand new website, Google's seeing this for the very first time. So it's going to take you a little bit of time. If you're in Denver versus Rockville, Maryland, obviously the competition is a lot different. So it's going to be tougher to rank there as well. So there's many factors that go into it, but it's not something within a month or two that you expect to see results. I always say that 6 to 12 month is the sweet spot.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll leave it to you guys to close it on down there.
Wonderful. Yeah, last thing I'll say, other than thank you all for coming. I know we didn't get to questions. Please feel free to reach out to me, Olivia at Spectora.com, and I will answer them for you. If we didn't get to them, just email me your question. I'll get you in touch with the right person. Aside from that, thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. Hope to see you at the next one. If you ever have webinar topics you want us to cover, let us know. We're always looking to make sure we can provide the most useful info for you. And with that, everyone have an awesome day.
Thanks, everyone.